I have to say, going into it, I really enjoyed it. I really had a good time. Always when you come out of these screenings, these sort of press screenings, the publicists want you to give some sort of immediate reaction. And my kind of first reaction was, it's the best Jurassic in a decade.
Let me put it this way, that whole experience in the movie theater, from the moment the preview started until the credits start rolling, I will never forget. Because when you get that feeling that I wish I could go back in time and re-experience that for the first time, without no, I would love to do that. That's how great this film was. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Kingdom of Dreams podcast, The Making of Stories. I'm your host, Jawad Mir. Jurassic World Rebirth is out. I went to see it yesterday on Wednesday at 1 p.m. show, and boy, did I love the film. And I don't want to give too much away, but I have my guest today is James Mottram, who I've had the pleasure of having on this podcast probably close to 9, 10 times. We've reviewed films, we've talked about his books that he have written, Jurassic Park, the official script book, Jurassic Park, Ultimate Visual History trilogy to Jurassic World, and many other books that he's written. And he and I talked about Jurassic World, but boy, has Gareth Edwards hit this film out of the park. And you will hear a lot of stuff in our conversation, a little bit of spoilers here and there. So without further ado, here's my conversation with movie critic and author James Mottram. What have you been up to, obviously, besides watching movies?
Well, I've just been to the Mediterrane, I should pronounce it correctly, Mediterrane Film Festival in Malta.
Okay.
It's their third edition this year, and yeah, it's a great little festival. Well, I shouldn't really say little. It's definitely getting bigger. Um, it's it's kind of incredible because it's they use it partly as a way of showcasing Malta as a destination for filmmakers. So, for example, this year they had the opening screening was a kind of retrospective screening of Gladiator 2 held outside in Fort Ricasoli, which was one of the venues that Ridley Scott used to actually film the movie there.
Oh,
So,
cool.
yeah, it's got a lot of that basically, and yeah, it's right and at the end, in a sort of weird, I suppose, circular moment. Russell Crowe came on to collect an award. They have these awards at the end called the Golden Bee Awards, and yeah, Russell Crowe came on and picked up an award for being a film legend, which, let's face it, he is. So yeah, it was a kind of fun. It was a fun week or so in very hot Malta.
That's amazing. That's good to hear that you're doing that. And,
Uh,
with a
And I should, sorry, Josh, is just say, just to tie into what we're here to.
I was gonna say that too, but go ahead. I'll let you do
Yeah,
it.
go on, I'll do it. So basically, well, the fort itself is right next to Malta Film Studios, which isn't really a studio in what you might imagine, although they are looking to build a soundstage ultimately. But it is two enormous outdoor water tanks, which I had a good look around, and that's partly where they filmed Jurassic World Rebirth. So how about that for tying it in?
Couldn't agree with you more. And uh, you know, you and I have talked about Jurassic World Rebirth maybe once or twice, very subtly, but when the trailer came out, I think. And obviously, you've written two books on Jurassic Park trilogy, Jurassic World trilogy, and you're very familiar with Jurassic. If you want to call it Jurassic Universe or franchise, even though I don't want to, so am I. I have my thoughts, obviously, about the film, and I one of the things I did do was I limit myself from watching too many trailers. So I only saw the first teaser and the full trailer, and that's it. Like I didn't see anything else. I refused to. But before I talk about the film, what did you think of the film?
Well, I similarly didn't see a lot. I saw a trailer when I went to see Bridget Jones. Actually, they showed it a press screening of Bridget Jones, and they had the trailer had just dropped, and they screened it before the Bridget Jones film. So I saw that, and I was very excited. And then I went on a post production visit, I guess you could call it, to Abbey Road Studios, where they were in London, where they were filming, they were recording rather the score. Alexandre Desplat was there, and so was Gareth Edwards, the director. So I saw little clips as they were recording the score. Everything was silent, so I couldn't hear any. There was no dialogue. It was just like little excerpts from, mainly obviously from the action sequences. So it was all completely out of context. So I didn't know where any of these action sequences came. I didn't know the storyline, and I kept away largely from build up sort of press. I did speak to David Kep afterwards, who told me a little more. This basic premise that they're going to this island, to collect samples from the three largest dinosaurs. But I think that was kind of well in the public domain by that point anyway. So I didn't know a lot, like you. I kind of kept away from it, and I wanted to experience it, as much as one can these days with these huge films, with a sense of purity. And yeah, I mean, like you said, I've written the two visual history books. I also did the Jurassic script book as well. So I'm steeped in that universe. There's no question about it. And I don't know whether that makes me more likely to like it or more likely to be critical of it, if you know what I mean. And yeah, I guess I'm a fan, so I'm always going to want it to be really good. But I have to say, going into it, I really, really enjoyed it. I really had a good time. Always when you come out of these screenings, these sort of press screenings, the publicists want you to give some sort of immediate reaction. And my kind of first reaction was, it's the best Jurassic in a decade. Now, we can argue whatever you think of Jurassic World, the 2015 movie, Colin Trevorrow's first film. I love that film because I had zero expectations at that point. At that point, I hadn't written any Jurassic books. I just went in as a fan, as someone who'd enjoyed the first trilogy of movies, but I hadn't been like waiting for the last, whatever it was at that point, 10 years or more for the next Jurassic. Because there was obviously this huge kind of gap of time. I had no expectations. I went in and I loved Jurassic World because it was the film that I think all fans wanted to see, i.e., the John Hammond Park finally open for business. And I thought they pulled that off brilliantly. But I thought what Gareth does here, it was like mainlining Jurassic Park again on some level, and there are pros and cons of that. I did think about it afterwards of like, well, is it a little too close to Jurassic Park? Are they paying too much of a homage to it? We can talk about that in a minute, I think. But purely from, I would say, two set piece, no, maybe three set pieces out of five. Those set pieces being the Mosasaur encounter towards the beginning of the film, the T Rex encounter, and the Titanosaurus encounter in the field. I thought were absolutely staggering sequences. My heart rate was up in the Mosasaur sequence and the T Rex sequence, and I had a lump in my throat for the Titanosaurus sequence where you get a real blast of the John Williams score. Just for those moments alone, I was like, well, he nailed it, basically. He made me feel like this is a Jurassic movie, once again. And it's interesting because I kind of tried to work it out in terms of settings for the seven movies. I kind of counted it up. About five of them, or five and a half, or something like that, have all been on an island, either Isla Nublar, Isla
Mm-hmm.
Sorna, or this Ile Saint Hubert, I think it's called. Um, and they've obviously, you've had the end of the Lost World, the second movie, which was in San Diego. You had the second half of Fallen Kingdom, which is in a house, and then Dominion is kind of all over the place. It's a globe-trotting and chase movie, basically. And you could argue that those bits don't work as well as everything that's ever been set on an island because it's a contained space. I mean, the end of Fallen Kingdom is in a contained space as well, but I think an island gives it that tropical, exotic, the land that time forgot kind of vibe, and that's what seems to work best for a Jurassic film. I mean, going forward, and we can talk about this in a minute as well. I'm not sure how they're going to play out if they do another one, which let's face it, they're bound to. I, do we want another film set on an island? I'm not sure, but they're going to have to come up with a really good idea. But going back in this sort of, let's call it, Mission Impossible style adventure, which it sort of is, it worked really well. I thought Scarlett absolutely nailed it. She's supposed to be this huge Jurassic fan. I'm not saying that shines through in the performance, but she's very good at action. We know her from Black Widow and so forth. I thought she did a terrific job here. Mahershala Ali is the sort of ship's captain. Okay, he's not quite on Quint from Jaws level, but he's good in it. He's very watchable. Likewise, Jonathan Bailey, who doesn't try and do a Jeff Goldblum, as Doctor Loomis. It's kind of a mix of Alan Grant and the Goldblum character, but I still thought he was great. He was entertaining. Yeah, there was so much to like about this film. I just found it very, very likable. But come on, give me you. Let's hear you.
As I said earlier, I was holding off from watching clips because one of the things that I did with Jurassic Park 2, Lost World, which came out 28 years ago, because the internet was new, I was watching stuff. And even though I loved the experience, I knew a lot of scenes. With this film, few things to start off with before I talk about the film. One of the things that was very refreshing was that was shot on film and the colors. They were saturated. It wasn't like, desaturated color tones that you see in a lot of TV series and movies nowadays. You felt like you were in the 90s, 80s, and 70s in terms of the color and all that. The cinematography by John Matheson, who's also worked on Gladiator, was phenomenal. I mean, one of my favorite sequences in the film is not an action sequence. It's a dialogue between Mahesha's and Scarlett's character on the ship, on the boat, and there's this light kind of glimmering on his face back and forth, and it's the amount of detail they paid attention to was phenomenal in that sense. I wasn't too crazy about the score until the theme hit in the middle of the film. That really, I mean, that wonder that you got from the first Jurassic Park when you first see the dinosaurs, he really recaptured it. Like I felt I have never seen a dinosaur movie before. Like that's how great that sequence was. And the best part of the film, yes, it had some not so great dialogue, which is fine. I'm okay with that because I'm looking at it from an entertainment standpoint. It was thrilling as hell. You can even call it scary at times. Unexpected sequences, a lot of silent moments before something happens, and it just encapsulates you. I mean, Gareth, I've been a huge fan of since he came out with his independent film way back in 2008 or 9, Monsters. And since then he's done Rogue One, Godzilla, The Creator, and now this. His way of executing direction with the visual effects, because he's a visual effects guy, is beyond. I mean, is literally, I have to tell you this, it's up to par with Spielberg. Like, there are very few directors who can pull that off, and you don't feel for a second that these are like CGIs or it look fake. You're just so drawn into the film, into the moments. I mean, for me, there were so great moments, but I think the best moment, which I won't spoil it, is when one of the characters goes to take a pee. I thought that was I mean, that literally sets the film right after that. Like that happens, and then boom, 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 things start happening. So all in all, I mean, I felt there was a homage to Jaws. You know, I felt there was Jurassic Park 3 in there with the family element. Definitely, there were sequences from the Lost World, Jurassic Park, and for me, I'm willing. As much as I enjoyed the first Jurassic World film. I'm willing to forget about all three of those films because this really lives up to the first two or even three. I mean, three at the time I didn't like it, but looking back at it, I thought it was a great. It's a good, entertaining, thrilling film. But I hope they don't make a sequel, but I know they will, and I may want to watch it. But I thought Gareth did a phenomenal job in every department. He really put you on the edge of the seat, suspense, and I think audience are gonna love that. And this film is gonna do really, really well because of that.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I don't always read other people's reviews, in the wake of a film, but I was very curious to see when the embargo dropped, what the reactions were, because you see these social media reactions before the embargo drops, and of course everyone goes crazy, but you can't really take much stock in that. It's much better to look at sort of a gamut of reviews. So I saw, sorry that some of these are UK publications, so some of your listeners may not be familiar, but 5 stars from the Telegraph. And I read that review. It was, he said a lot of what you've just said. Um, and then Rolling Stone, I read, which was really like down on it, and it was like, oh, this is really generic, and yeah, he was tough. I think it was a he. The reviewer was tough on that. And then Empire magazine, they kind of went right in the middle and gave it 3. So, and in a way, I'm okay with that. That it won't necessarily be for everyone. Some people will pick holes in certain aspects of it, but I think it can't be denied exactly what you just said. The action sequences are brilliantly executed, particularly the ones I mentioned earlier, the aquatic scene early on, the T-Rex scene, which is absolutely fabulous. I mean,
Yeah.
particularly, I think whether people even know this, because even Gareth didn't know this. Apparently, I can say this now because I interviewed Gareth recently, and I mentioned the T Rex scene, which of course comes from the original Michael Crichton novel, which they were going to do for the original movie. They storyboarded it, and then they dropped it because it was A, too expensive at the time. They were trying to keep the budget down. B, obviously digital effects were just in their infancy then. They had the big animatronic, of course, but to do a creature wading through water, chasing, at that point it's obviously Alan Grant and the kids on a raft. Now it gets changed to the Delgado family, who are sort of this stranded family that you alluded to a minute ago. It's I'm so glad they kept it till now, because obviously now they can use digital effects. It looks so much more convincing, as it probably would have done then. And yeah, it's an absolutely terrific sequence. Yeah, I think it's impossible to argue against what Gareth's done here. He's just knocked it out of the park with those sequences. But some people were a bit like, well, we've seen this kind of thing before. It does pay homage, as I said earlier, to things like Jurassic Park. One you didn't mention was Raiders of the Lost Ark, which apparently the sequence in the kind of cave where they go up and into the nest.
Ah,
That was originally just a kind of cave and a nest in the script. Gareth changed it into a sort of temple, alluding to sort of Aztec and Mayan designs, which of course was his nod to Raiders of the Lost Ark. I think he's fine with sort of the comparison. Not he's not comparing himself to Spielberg. He knows that Spielberg's the master. He absolutely loves Spielberg stuff. He grew up on him. But yeah, I think there are nods to Jaws, there are nods to Raiders, etc., and all the other films you just alluded to. And I think he's okay with that. It's like, this is a fun ride. It's meant to propel us back to the 90s. That's why they got David Koepp back to write the script. It's his first script since The Lost World in the Jurassic universe, although he's kind of always been in the background, even across the Jurassic World franchise. He's always been there for, to pass notes and so forth. And I think Koepp really brings the humor back in it. I'll be honest, I found the boyfriend character of the Delgado family quite irritating. But he still did bring some humor into it. And you mentioned that Mahershala Scarlet scene. I'm guessing that's the scene where they talk about. I think they have kind of a little heart to heart
yeah,
about
yeah,
is it what's happened to various people in their lives. I I like the fact that there was that scene in there just to sort of let the characters breathe a little bit.
yep.
It wasn't all action, action, action. You got to know them a little bit. There's a few other little moments. The Jonathan Bailey's character, Loomis, he's very much talking about the morality, the ethics of the science here. Whether it's bringing dinosaurs back to life, or this kind of collecting samples so that they can make this medicine to cure heart disease. And obviously, he wants the science to be there for everyone. Not to be something that the pharmaceutical companies will exploit and make trillions of dollars from. And again, I like the fact that there was time to talk about these topics, and that again made us think back to what was in the first movie. I mean, there's nothing in this film that's as good as the lunch scene they have in Jurassic Park, where they're all sitting around the table. But that was a that film is a lightning in a bottle moment, and I know they've tried to recapture it 6 times since. They never managed it. This comes pretty close,
Yep.
but perhaps it will always remind us of Jurassic Park because that's the original, and it's very hard to top that movie. It probably will never be topped. Um, but yeah, I thought they made a pretty sterling effort to do so.
Yeah, no, all in all, I couldn't agree with you more, James. And I think this whole incorporating Spielberg homages, if you want to call them, I think it's not about necessarily comparison because that's what he grew up with, and I can totally relate to that because anytime I'm working on a project, I have to see a Spielberg film. Like I have to see a Spielberg film just to get into that zone. Not that I'm trying to imitate or copy, it's just because that's what I learned from, right? And you have to throw those stuff in there just to as a thank you for, a lot teaching me what you taught me, even though you were not physically there. And Gareth had, and that scene about where they talk about their families beside the lighting was just very hard to art and was very phenomenal. I will agree. I will admit one thing though, that the little thing that threw me off in the beginning, and this is just a little finical thing. I mean, this is just doesn't really even matter. I just felt that even though they were trying to set the film up in New York City, I just felt the pacing of it and the cuts were pacing was good, but the cuts of it was too much and it was just kind of pulling me out. But once they leave New York, I mean, then it just becomes like, not necessarily a pure entertainment, but there's a lot of heart to heart. It's edited really, really well. And again, I mean, I agree with you. I found the boyfriend to be a little bit irritating at the beginning, but there was a really cool dialogue by his girlfriend's father, which I just saw it again. I can't remember the dialogue, but it's like, the other world is going to tear you down. Don't tear yourself down. Basically, that was the analogy. Like, the world is there to do shit to you. Don't call yourself out on things. So there was some really nice lessons in there. And one thing that I really loved that there was not a lot of explanation. It's like even for a non-Jurassic Park fan. I don't know if anybody has not seen Jurassic Park films. I refuse to believe that, but let's just say there's a lot of people out there. You don't have to know the Jurassic World or Jurassic Park stories to enjoy this because at the core of it, it's a scary film. And you can forget about all the explanations, and there was no battle sequences, which I know a lot of people were expecting. It just kept it simple. All the dinosaurs show up. I think the longest screen time any dinosaur had was T-Rex, essentially, and everything else was just and whatever the dinosaur was. I forget the name. The bird sequence. Like I thought that was really
I
when.
can never pronounce that one.
Yeah,
It begins with Q, Quetzalosaurus, or something like that. But forgive me,
yeah,
dinosaur experts out there, because I cannot pronounce that one. Everyone, I've seen a lot of people, by the way, talking about that sequence, referring to it as a pterodactyl or pteranodon. That
yeah.
is it. That is incorrect. But yeah. Yeah, a couple of things. Sorry, just to backtrack on what I was saying about Gareth. When I interviewed him, he didn't actually realize he'd read the script, obviously, and then they shot the script and they shot that T Rex in the river sequence. He did not know that came from the Michael Crichton novel.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so he'd read the Crichton novel when he was about 17, obviously a long time ago, and in fact, I think he said he got to the final 10 pages of the book and then the movie came out, like back in '93. So he went straight to see the movie, and then he thought, well, it's all right, I'm seeing the movie, and then of course the ending is sort of slightly different anyway. But he'd forgotten about the river raft sequence, and it hadn't twigged in his mind when he read the script, and he shot it, and then, and this is a little bit embarrassing to admit, but they were editing Jurassic World Rebirth in London, him and his editor. They were on an insane schedule, as they have been across this entire movie. And one day they had to wait for something or other. So they had like half an hour off. So they went out and he said, let's go to the comic book store in London. So I'm not sure which one they went to, but they went to a store. The editor saw, I'm pretty sure, and I think it might be right next to you on your pile of books there, that on the top, the yellow one. Is it at the very top? No, the
This
other
one?
way. No, the other way. The yellow one there is no.
Oh
It's
yeah,
the one.
yeah, yeah.
Is that the script book?
Yep, it
Yeah,
is.
it is. Right. I think it's that one that he bought, the editor. took
Yep.
it back, took it back to the office, and started flicking through it. And of course, that book has got storyboards from the dumped river raft sequence, and the editor looked at it and went, "Oh my God, there was supposed to be a river raft sequence in the original Jurassic Park, and none of them knew about it." And then Gareth was kind of like, "Well, I'm glad I didn't know because I'd have been terrified to shoot that sequence, knowing it had already been, looked over by Spielberg and considered by Spielberg once upon a time." But I actually think he did a terrific job. Obviously, that sequence in the ultimate film in Rebirth is different from what's in the book because it's different characters for a start. But I will say, if I take one image away from Rebirth, not giving too much away, but with the yellow raft upside down on the little girl and the jaws of the T-Rex kind of almost bursting through, I thought that's just a beautiful moment in the film. One other thing I wanted to mention, just to touch back on John Matheson, as you brought him up, you mentioned shooting on film, which is completely correct. I'm not sure if you knew that they not only shot on film, but they shot on the original Panavision cameras
Yes.
and using the original Panavision lenses that they shot Jurassic Park with. Again, just to kind of get that feel of Jurassic Park. It's obviously very subtle. I don't know how much anyone will pick that up, but there's so much thought gone into let's try and remember what made Jurassic Park great, and let's try and recapture that feeling, which I think they really did in so many ways. It was just a real concerted effort to go, this is what made that original movie great. Let's try and get back to it. Maybe you're right. Maybe this would be a perfect place to end it in a sort of circular moment. Be like, I don't want to give too much away about the ending, but I feel like it could end on a perfect. Jurassic movies nearly always end on a sunset, right? And that's a perfect way to end a franchise. We all know that Universal are going to go back and
Oh
try.
yeah.
Well,
Uh,
unless this flops, and I don't think it's going to flop.
no, I don't think so. I think even if it starts off not so strong, and even the Rotten Tomatoes which I just saw before talking to you was at 54%, and the
Yeah,
audience
I
was
saw that figure or something like that figure. I was staggered that it, but that's what I
yeah.
said about the kind of reviews that have gone all over the place. And I'd put it much higher than
Oh
that. But
yeah. But the audience reviews, I think, was a 77 or 74. So I do think this film has that, it's gonna have legs because of the word of mouth, because it's scary and people like to be afraid. So I'll give you a little tidbit. So my wife, she's not into scary movies at all, right? She's seen the Jurassic films. I think she hasn't seen the last one or two, the Dominion and Fallen Kingdom. And I was gonna take my son, and I said, let's go all of us, like my daughter, my wife, my son, and myself. And she said, no, you guys go. You and your son go. We will stay home. So then I finally convinced them, and they went. And she was literally, I have never seen her, like obviously like this. And there were, when something works out, like there's a suspense moment, and the characters follow through, like they escape. She was like this, right? And for an audience member to be engaged like that, who's not a Jurassic fan, I think that speaks a testament to the Gareth film, because I don't think it's just a dinosaur film. That's what I'm looking at. It's like it's a scary film. It's a thriller, and it keeps you on the edge of your seat. And like you said, the word, like your heart was pounding, and that's what it is. I mean, we can reiterate ourselves in different ways, but hats off to Gareth. I was not go I was hoping for it to be a great film. I won't lie, last 4 or 5 days when I started seeing the Rotten Tomatoes and the audience reaction, like but then I was blown away. Yeah.
okay, so let me ask you this. So, in terms of like blockbusters that have come out this summer so far, I'm guessing you've seen them all. I mean,
Most.
like for example, F1. Now, I thought F1 was fantastically filmed. I saw it in the IMAX in Leicester Square in London. It looked gorgeous, but I thought the story was terrible and really corny. And so I marked it down on that for that basis. Whereas I did enjoy the Jurassic story. Yes, we've sort of seen this kind of thing before, but I thought it clips along well enough that I didn't question it too much. Whereas F1 I thought was so, despite the amazing visuals, I thought was so cheesy that I was like, oh no. Mission Impossible 8, kind of wrapped it all up, but again had its flaws. I don't know. So I would put it as the best blockbuster of this summer so far, which is pretty much what the reviewer at the Telegraph in the UK said. He said, "Well, if there's a better blockbuster this summer, I'll be surprised." But I mean, there's still a couple I think to come out. But yeah, I don't know. How do you feel? Where do you place it in the rankings?
So I haven't seen F1 yet. I'm going to see it this weekend or on next week. But I will tell you which films I have. What I was pleasantly surprised by this summer. I was really surprised by Lilo and Stitch. I don't know if you've seen that.
Of course,
Um,
I love Lilo and Stitch, but
right? I mean, I love the animated version. I wasn't gonna go watch the live version. My kids and my nephews and nieces went, and they said
there
they
you
were
go.
pleasantly surprised. There you go. There you go. So I went to see that, which I spoke to. I had somebody on the podcast, the cinematographer, and I told them that I'm going back to your point, but I'm just kind of saying something else here. I told them it reminded me of the film from the '90s, Monkey Trouble. It was very grounded. Again, the colors
Is
were
that the one with
great.
Harvey Keitel?
Yeah, and what was that girl name? She was an American Beauty as well.
Not Thora
Um,
Birch?
yeah, yeah. She was like a little child star at the time. So it was very grounded, and I enjoyed that. This same thing with Jurassic World Rebirth. It reminded me, maybe it's nostalgia, I don't know. Mission Impossible, I thought it was better than the last film. But my biggest problem with that was, which I learned not to do with Jurassic World, was I saw too many clips, and I don't know if that was the reason I didn't enjoy it. Even though it was great, it was entertaining, Tom Cruise at its best. I haven't seen How to Train Your Dragon. I've seen a few others that I'm not remembering right now. But yes, I think all in all out, I don't think there will be a film forget this summer. I think this year that is going to beat out Jurassic World. I
Well,
don't think
maybe in terms of box office, Avatar will beat Avatar
Oh, is
3.
that coming out this year?
I think so, isn't it at the end of isn't it December? Um, Late December though, so really the box office will be next year. But
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
if you think about Dominion, where the reviews were really vicious, they were savage, frankly. Um, and yet, albeit it just got over $1 billion, but it still made $1 billion despite bad reviews. And Fallen Kingdom, I think the reviews were so-so as well, or at least undecided, and yet that still made a ton of money as well. So I would put money on this going
Yeah.
over $1 billion. I mean, Dominion came in 2022, just after sort of COVID was beginning to kind of recede, and even then people were sort of still being cautious about going back to cinemas. I think that's less so now. So it's the most fun summer movie I've encountered. I think I can see why people will go and see F1 because especially an older crowd. I think people have said, "Oh, it's kind of for the dads and all that stuff," and I agree with that. I think people were, and that's it's strange you mention the nostalgia of Jurassic World Rebirth. Going back into the '90s. F1 is like watching an old school Jerry Bruckheimer film, and there's pros and cons of that. I have to say, but yeah, the story just completely took me out of it. That said, you might enjoy it, so we'll see. I think you'll enjoy the visuals, but I just think the Jurassic fan base, which is huge and loyal, they will come out for this. I mean, I've seen a couple of people, some guys I know that are really hardcore Jurassic fans. One of them is a bit like, he said it didn't really expand the mythology of the franchise, and that's true. I don't think you learn a great deal more. I mean, we see right at the beginning. I don't think this is too much of a giveaway, but this sort of InGen laboratory that's on the island where there's been, how many islands, by the way, has John Hammond got that
I
that
don't
did
know.
did research and development for his damn theme park? But and that opening sequence, without giving too much away, is a throwback to the opening sequence of Jurassic Park, I
Yeah.
would say. Um, what did you think? I wasn't totally up on board with this, but the fact that this laboratory has been creating sort of genetic mutations of dinosaurs. I think it's pretty clear by now, this is well out in the public domain, that there's a big new dinosaur that's obviously some sort of genetic mutation. I wasn't that keen on that as an element for the story. I thought it was fine, but I don't know. I didn't think that creature beat the T Rex. The T Rex is still the mother of all dinosaurs.
I agree, but I don't. So I'll tell you why. So if you look at it from here's something that I've learned recently, where sometimes you have to sort of accept the fact that this is not a real life, this is a movie. So you have to come up with something new for the audience to be engaged with. Okay, we've seen like six Jurassic films, and most of them, if not, I think two of them had some genetically modified dinosaurs, if I'm not mistaken. And there was like one in each film. So now they want to go all out. So how do you bring that audience in from a different standpoint? Does it beat out T-Rex? No. And I thought there would be T-Rex appearance later in the film. But the way they executed the last scene with the smog, and I mean, I don't want to give it anything away, and there's a scene with the light sequence and all that.
You mean with the flare, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
with the flare, but then that there's a scene of a helicopter going and coming back from behind the fog or behind the smoke, whatever that was. And you know where I'm going with this, right? So I think that Gareth's ability to create these terrifying, suspenseful moment didn't necessarily. I didn't feel. I didn't think I compared him D-Rex to T-Rex, but I was okay with it because we have seen the whole T-Rex thing so many times in the end in so many different films. We saw it in the Dominion. We kind of saw it in the first Jurassic World, right? If I'm not my memory is serving. So I think it was a different approach. But you're right. T-Rex is T-Rex. I mean, a lot of people love T-Rex. But I thought the D-Rex thing was it had a little bit of a design of Alien. I'm not sure if you picked that up.
I didn't particularly, but I know that's what they've gone back to Geiger's designs for Alien. That was one of their influences,
Okay.
along with the Rancor from Return of the Jedi.
Yes, yes. So I was okay with it because I think how many things and the whole thing with mythology that you talked about, one of the Jurassic Park fans, I'm okay without that too because I don't want explanations about this and that. We've had that so many times in so many films. I'm just going there to be entertained, and there were some human elements in there, some really feel good moments, some really terrifying moments, and there was no like sometimes Act Three in most good films falls apart. With this one, it didn't for me.
Yeah, it's funny. I've seen other people. I didn't have a problem with the finale, and we won't go into it too much, of course. But um, some people I've spoken to said, oh, they thought it was too abrupt. They didn't, but I don't think the finale is the best element of the film. I think there are better sequences earlier in the film, but I thought it was fine. It worked well enough. And I was thinking all the way through it, as you mentioned, the sort of smoke and the helicopters and the flares, that was giving me severe Apocalypse Now vibes. I'm no way
That's
comparing this film to Apocalypse Now, by the way, which is one of the great films of all time. But, there's a little bit of that jungle stuff going on there. Um, we should also, I think, talk about the Easter eggs, and I'm curious to see what you think about that. So the first couple are pretty obvious. There's when there you mentioned New York, so you get two in New York very early on, where the Rupert Friend character, the guy who is from the pharmaceutical company, Martin Krebs, he's in his car, and you see the objects seem closer
yes,
message that's written on the wing mirror of the car, which of course harks back to the first film and the Jeep when they're being chased by the T Rex. And then not long afterwards, they go to the museum where Loomis works, and you see the when dinosaurs rule the earth banner
yeah,
falling down, which I thought was a really clever way of saying dinosaurs aren't popular anymore. And so there were those nods, and then there's one I haven't spotted, but I've read about it in the production notes, so I'm very keen to go back and look at this a second time because I bet it's a blink and you'll miss it moment when they're on the island and there's that gas station with a mini mart, which obviously also gives you Lost World vibes because there was a similar location in Lost World. But apparently, the art direction team stacked the mini mart with like magazines and things referencing like Back to the Future, Poltergeist, all of those kind of Spielberg produced movies from the 80s. Now, I don't know how clear that is on camera. I need to go back and check that out. But I thought all of those little touches were, of course, the fans are going to spot those early ones. And again, I'm not sure how clear the magazines are in the mini mart, but they're just like little affectionate nods again to Spielberg to basically say, this guy, he's the master. Basically, he's the man that has brought us these dreams over the last 50 years. I mean, it's funny that it's 50 years this year since Jaws came out, which for me is still absolutely untouchable. I put that movie above Jurassic Park. I have to admit that, and I just think that movie is he's never touched that movie again. He's done different movies that are incredible, but Jaws is just such a perfect piece of work that I don't know. For me, that is it's so weird that it came so early in his career, but yeah, I don't know. There's nothing that touches Jaws really.
I I did notice all those Easter eggs, and there was a trailer just before the film of Jaws' 50th anniversary re-release on August 29th, and just watching that on the big screen before a Jurassic film, you have no idea how amazing that felt. I mean, like, let me put it this way, that whole experience in the movie theater, from the moment the preview started until the credits start rolling, I will never forget. Because you know when you get that feeling that I wish I could go back in time and re-experience that for the first time without no, I would love to do that. That's how great this film was. Plus the previews. Because I was just so, I mean, there were some, I shouldn't have gone in like an afternoon screening. There was little kids and adults having conversation, which really bothered me. But the film really pulled me in that I forgot about it. And hats off to Gareth. I mean, I've been a fan of his for 15 years, and I think I always will be. And he has done a phenomenal job. And yeah, I mean, I can't. I noticed a lot of those things about the Lost World, and I haven't seen the magazines, but I heard about it. I'll go to see the movie again. I'm gonna go check it out again.
I think it's something you won't really see on screen. Maybe when
I
you
don't care. I'll still go.
yeah, but maybe when no, I'm going again. I'm going to go and see it this week, like in a public screening, or next week, when it sort of dies down a little bit, because I want to see it again and see how I feel on a second time. It's always weird with any film when you see it a second time, because your feelings are not necessarily going to be the same as when you saw it first time. And but I'm going to be as curious to see like what the person I'm going to go with, what they make of what they make of it, and if they have the same reaction that I had first time around. We'll see. But yeah, I will be looking out for the magazines just in
I
case.
I will say one little thing. So I w- even though that won't happen, but I hope Universal, including Emblem, learned this from the actual theme of the film, which is in the opening that they talk about that how there was a dialogue by Jonathan Bailey is that how 5 years ago there would be like a 5 hour wait to get into the museum, but now that they're everywhere, nobody cares. Same analogy, too many films. People are not going to care. Let's just end it right now.
Okay, well, that's a very good point, and I think that is quite a self-referential moment in the film. But given that, as we've said multiple times through this chat, Universal almost certainly will
I
bankroll.
know, I know,
I mean, when I spoke
I
to
know.
David Kep, of course, I had to ask him at the end, "Are you? Have you had chat?" Because basically, that I don't know if we didn't really touch on this, but the reason it happened so quickly because it is an insane turnaround for because they Gareth wasn't even announced as the director until February 2024, and
Yeah,
they finished shooting by sort of September October 2024. I know that the composer didn't saw a rough cut in early December and then started working on the score. And obviously they had all the visual effects to get done in all of that time. I mean, that's an insane schedule. But it started because Spielberg sort of contacted David Koepp and said, "Do you fancy just batting around some ideas for another one?" So they spent a few months. I guess this would have been, I don't know, maybe 2022. It's hard to say, but Spielberg apparently his one of his earliest ideas, and I don't think this plays out in the movie, but maybe you can tell me differently. One of his earliest ideas was the idea of bringing back the mosasaur, this huge aquatic dinosaur creature, and apparently it was sort of feasting on fishing grounds. Now, I don't think that plays out in the. That's not really mentioned in the final movie,
No.
but that was sort of a starting point. So obviously they knew they were going to bring that creature back, and then obviously back and forth over the next few months they developed these ideas. So obviously I said to Kep at the end, have you considered well, what would it be, number eight, basically an eighth idea? And he said they'd sort of had conversations, but right now they're concentrating on another project that he's written, that Spielberg has just finished directing, which, as you probably know, is this sort of as yet untitled secret, possibly sci-fi film, which apparently they've just shown footage of.
Yep, I
There was
read that.
this, yeah, there was this kind of launch of this very posh screening room at Universal's.
Steven Spielberg Theater.
Yep, exactly, and he showed some clips from it, and it's like lots of people in suits chasing after Emily Blunt and Josh O'Connor. Sounds exciting. God knows what it will be about. Whether it's back to, I don't know, Close Encounters or something like that, we'll find out. But obviously they're concentrating on that, so they they're only at the very tentative stages of thinking about number eight, if they even go ahead with it. But what I wanted to ask you is, where do you think it could go? That to make it not just a retread. I mean, that's obviously that's like, if you come up with a really good idea, then frankly you should be writing it. But I can't see what they would do. It feels like, well, you've done the dinosaurs in the world, you've done the dinosaur theme park, you've done the kind of Mission Impossible style adventure. I don't know what you do now. I mean, it's dinosaurs on the moon. Who knows?
I honestly don't know either. I mean, the only thing I can think of is another lab, another island, another site B or site C or site D. But they really have to come up with something. The problem is, which will probably eventually, everything has a rise and fall, right? So Jurassic, as you and I have talked about this, that how we didn't realize how big of a fan base it had, right? Like in the last 8, 10 years, like the merchandise has gone through the roof. I mean, they made ridiculous amount of money in merchandise. So obviously they're cashing on that too. The question becomes is, when is it going to go downhill? And it will. So how do you avoid that? By coming up with something original. What that original idea is, I mean, they've explored almost everything, unless, like you said, it's going on the moon or I don't know. I have no idea, to be honest. Maybe I should come up with something and pitch them, but it's going to be hard to beat. And I think the key here is, to me, if they can figure out, they can maybe recycle a lot of sites, Bs or whatever, all those ideas, as long as they can pull off a good scare and a decent story. I don't think audience is going to care.
Yeah, it's
But
kind of like the James Bond situation at the moment. Like, how do they relaunch Bond, having killed him off effectively with Daniel Craig, which they'd never done before? Now, of course, they've just got in Denis Villeneuve, which is fantastic. I'm on board. I'm on board with that idea because he's such a stylish filmmaker who knows how to put a blockbuster together. The early word is they're looking at the likes of Tom Holland, Harris Dickinson, and Jacob Elordi as a youngish. That's basically around about the age of 28, 29. So it would be a young Bond again. Maybe that's the right way to go about it. But of course, we've been there before. We did it with Craig. So I don't know how they fix that problem either. I mean, and oddly, there was talk about Christopher. It's probably total rumors, but there was talk about. Well, it was rumors, but talk about Christopher Nolan, is a huge Bond fan, wanting to do the first two books, the first two Ian Fleming books, back in period, so back in the '60s, etc., etc. And that got me thinking about The Lost World. I'm talking here about the Crichton novel, The Lost World, which is very, very different in a lot of ways to the film. And I wonder if they left it for a while, whether they just go, you know what, let's remake The Lost World, but do it faithful to the book. Now, that means remaking a Spielberg film, which is pretty much, you just don't do it, do you? But I'd be interested to see if they would do something, go back to that book, because there's a lot that was not done in the original movie. And you could make it bloody, you could make it nasty, which is what that book is, much nastier than the original Jurassic Park book, and that's pretty nasty in places in the book. But That's the only thing I can think of that would be different and yet still very connected to the whole franchise. But I doubt they will do that because it
Maybe we
also.
should.
I was going to say it also means recasting Alan Grant, etc., etc., etc. Or actually, no, rather Jeff Goldblum, isn't it? So who's in that book? But yeah, I don't know, We'll see, but I can't think what they're going to do.
I think I'm sure you know about this story as we sort of wrap it up. Originally, I don't know how true it is in terms, maybe, in media they try to dramatize stuff and kind of embellish stuff. James Cameron and Spielberg were up against each other to get the rights to Jurassic Park, and Spielberg apparently edged out by 30 minutes or an hour, which I think is embellishing it. But watching a James Cameron Jurassic Park, kind of like Aliens, that would be crazy. I mean,
Yeah,
that whole concept of Aliens where it's like military and, a group of like, kind of like Predator, aliens, and that could be really cool.
well, the other thing is there's the unmade, I think it was John Sayles script, which is completely balmy, basically. That was around the time of after Jurassic Park 3, and they were kicking ideas around for a fourth one, and that's got some crazy ideas in it. So maybe if they went completely bonkers and did something like that, that would be interesting if they went back to that script, for example. But yeah, I mean, Cameron doing a more military style Jurassic film. No, I'd be on board with that one. I think we'd all be on board with that, especially after 3 Avatar movies. It'd be like, why not? Why not get Cameron in? I mean, he's probably, Gareth was a fantastic choice. As soon as I heard that name, I was like, oh yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah.
But Cameron would be just as perfect to do a Jurassic movie.
Let's hope that happens. Always pleasure talking to you, man. Thank you so much for your time. And yeah, let's do it again and appreciate it.
No problem. Take care, mate.